Hi everyone, I'm recording Chapter 9 here today. I will say that the material for Chapter 9 won't be due in a quiz until Sunday the 31st, and now that I think about it, I just said that that's Easter Sunday, so I'll put it off till April 2nd, give you some time. I want you to have that holiday, because of course the 31st is Easter. Well, this chapter is a little bit more relatable, but I gotta tell you, it's one of those things where your author is in a position where she has to cite old studies. And it's not to say that they're not valid. It's just that there are things that haven't been visited for a while, or that they've been visited fairly authoritatively in past decades and sort of resolved issues. Not to say that they proved things, but they, I don't know, just sort of put a bow on it, if you will. And that's to some degree also the case with visual imagery and spatial cognition. Then there's a brief introduction here that says the nature of mental pictures or visual images is one focus of the chapter. We look at the role of images in memory, and you might remember this guy, Andy Bell, from a previous chapter that memorized the cards in a deck of cards with imagery, with interacting images, like the nine of diamonds that was sawing the two of clubs. Crazy stuff, but that idiosyncratic stuff really works. So we'll consider experiments that investigate the ways people construct and use images and what they suggest about the way we think. But what's interesting about this is kind of historically, the study of imagery has had a controversial history within psychology, you might say. Although occasional references to imagery were made at the turn of the 20th century, in other words, about 1900 or so, the rise of behaviorism essentially dictated that this idea of imagery not even be looked at, if you'll remember, when we're speaking of classical and operant conditioning and only things that could be observed. So these behaviorists, and Watson was one and later Skinner, argued that imagery is not the sort of topic that can be investigated with enough rigor or control. So, and if they were kind of sourpusses about the whole thing, but I think even Skinner, towards the end of his life, was less dogmatic about these things. By the way, Skinner just died in 1990, fairly recently. I know that's 34 years, but still pretty recent. Nonetheless, interest in visual imagery never vanished, and Pavio, in fact, became stronger after the popularity of behaviorism waned in the 60s. By the way, Pavio has a few books. He's not just published in journal articles. He has a couple of rather good-selling books that were released in the neighborhood of 71, 73 in that area. They have bright orange covers. So a few different psychology professors I've known have had Pavio's books on their shelves.